last year 5 for you here at Arkansas, and I did a piece the other day about your roster having 35 years of Division I experience, 7 transfers, the most you've had since coming here. Will you talk a little bit about the vast difference between last year and a young team and maybe one that's a more veteran experience, and how that even impacts practices and how you plan?
Yeah, I think every year is different. It's really helped to have, the returners back, meaning Devo and Jalen Graham and, Cade and Lawson and Joseph. It's helped to we have a little bit more returners than we've had, and then obviously with the experience that we have with guys like L. Ellis and Davenport and Brazil's helped a lot on the side. He still hasn't jumped in with us full go. But having returners along with veterans that have played a lot of college basketball games. T. Mark comes from a great program at Houston. So, you get a guy like T. Mark who's played for such a great coach in Calvin Sampson. He understands how to work hard. He understands expectations. So I think that's, it's different. With experience, you can do things a little bit differently. And then with some, we have more returners than we did in the past as well. So we've been able to accelerate some of our schemes. But there's no comparison ever of really teams other than the fact that what can this group execute and then move on to the next step or maybe a different phase. We've got in a lot more right now than we have in the past 4 years, and I think it's a combination of a whole bunch of things.
Eric, I remember last year you were saying that you were having to repeat yourself a lot with that young group. Is there less of that kind of with the teaching aspect this summer?
Yeah, I mean it's when I come home at night, I mean I tell Danielle all the time, like it's there's not as much coaching frustration. It's in reality, we've had one bad practice, I thought, the whole summer. And then we've had a couple that, we'd like the energy a little bit better, but I would say, for the most part, and again, we're doing execution, we're doing teaching, we're doing 5-on-0 skeleton dry run type stuff. We have, no way, shape, or form have we even come close to a rotation. Roles are being formulated in the coaching staff and probably in the players' minds. I'm sure that, the players are forming opinions of teammates and forming maybe who they trust or formulating who could be a go-to guy. And I use that term very loosely, like who could be, because that's going to all evolve and develop. And, we hope to, whoever we are in November, we hope that just like in the past that we're much different come March. And that could be rotation player-wise. It could be set play. I mean, we still have a lot to try to figure out, but it's been a really good summer as far as working. Our mile times, much improved off, the last 4 years. And then, it's similar approach and adding type stuff that we had, with our last year at Nevada, I would say.
I know you guys have been limited in what you can do over the summer. I'm just curious of maybe your overall takeaways. Are there certain things about this group that have really stood out to you that you like, or maybe any areas you've identified that you need to work on going into the fall?
Really coachable group. And I'll give you an example. L. Ellis was really quiet. Did his own, was doing what he should do as an individual. I don't know if I've seen a player change so quickly in his leadership, his verbal command of the floor, been really cool to see in a very short period of time. And then the other guy, like Jalen Graham's practice habits are dramatically different than last year. Dramatically. He's done an incredible job of understanding expectations and then following through on his part. So there's been some evolving even this summer, but that's been one thing, Curtis. It's really been cool to see is Graham's evolution and how L has really picked up what our expectations are and how we try to conduct practice and how talking and verbalization is really important on the court for us.
And we've already talked a lot about the veterans on the group. Just curious what you've seen from your freshmen, Layden and Bay, so far, and how they've kind of acclimated themselves to the team.
Yep, great question. I mean, Bay got here a little bit later than some of the other guys. He's a very, very hard worker. Spends a lot of time on his own. Surprisingly, can make threes. At a much higher clip. Got to continue to work on hands. Catching the ball in traffic is an area that we want to continue to work with him on. And he's going to, because he's a freshman, he's going to play a little bit catch up on understanding as we add stuff. And again, he came late, so I think anybody that doesn't, isn't here when some of the foundation stuff has been put in, you're playing catch up, and certainly. He falls into that. And then, Layden he's got a very mature approach to how he conducts. I don't know if I've been around, a player his age who comes in pre-practice and goes into the weight room and starts stretching and getting himself mentally ready to practice, not play, but to practice. So he's mature beyond what his age is, and he's a good leader on the floor, and he's got point guard characteristics for sure.
You've had a lot of, I guess, non-traditional lead guards in your time at Arkansas with, Jimmy Witt, Jalen Tate, and even Anthony Black last year. With L. Ellis, how would you compare and contrast his skill set and kind of what he brings to the table as a potential point guard for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we look at, Jalen Tate and Jimmy Witt and Anthony Black, I mean, those guys were – they were freaks from a length and a size standpoint. Cody Martin at Nevada, Lindsey Drew at Nevada. Those guys are, they're 6'6" with 7-foot wingspans that guard 1.5 guys every possession just because of their length. So we're a little bit different, this year when L's out there and when Layden's out there. But we're also a little bit different because they have a little bit more traditional point guard mentality of some things that we want as well. So, probably not going to defensive rebound as well as we have in the past at that position because, Anthony Black's one of the best defensive rebounders in college basketball. Jimmy Witt was incredible, rebounding the ball. Tate was, great at it as well. So we're a little different in that aspect. And L's been traditionally a scoring guard who's played the point. We're gonna want him to continue to score, but also to be a little bit more of a facilitator than maybe what he has been able to show last year.
And with Keon Minifield, obviously you'd rather have him this year ready to play, but just is the plan with him maybe to have him on the JD Notate track? I know the redshirt year was very important for his development.
Yeah, I think one of the non-benefits of the way the transfer portal is right now, as I look back at the transfers that we've had that have sat out, and I'll use Cody and Caleb Martin as an example. I thought it was the best thing for the longevity of their career, and that's proven the case with how they're playing at the NBA level. Keon, super, super talented. Pat Eckerman, who was on staff here, and he watched our practice, and just, talked about, wow, he's special talent, and that's what the year's got to be about, is how can he get better. How can he gain weight? How can he gain strength? Certainly, we got a pretty good player on scout team.
Eric, I know you like these big preseason exhibition games. I'm just curious how that Purdue exhibition game came about. Do you have a connection with Coach Painter?
The only connection really with Coach Painter is just Nike puts on an event with a certain group of coaches, and so I've been a part of that with him and his wife and Danielle. But nothing substantial other than the fact that from afar, you're talking about one of the premier programs in the country. You're talking about when we met about as a staff, it was how can we play a top 3 team in the nation who would be willing to play us, and how could we possibly do that in front of our home fans, because last year we played Texas, who was a top 10 team for most of the year. How could we get a team in Bud Walton? And Todd Lee did a great job of working the exhibition game for us, and then doing that with administration and Purdue's administration. I think it's going to be a great game for Purdue, for Arkansas, for our fan base as well, because you're going to be able to get a Big Ten team in here that I'm going to assume comes in anywhere from 1 to 3, and they're really unique. They have incredible shooters. They were young last year. They have a player that could be player of the year in college basketball who's overly unique in how you have to prepare for him. So I think it gives us a lot of really great things. And we referenced our Texas game even as we got ready for the NCAA tournament, about things Texas did, about physicality. So hopefully this is a game that we're going to be able to reference throughout the course of the season as well.
Coach, you mentioned some of the practice habits that have been impressive, but when you think about the transfers, is there any one player or one specific basketball skill from them that's really stood out and surprised you so far in summer workouts?
I think that when you go and you get into the transfer portal, I think that you try to study a player analytically. You try to study how he did in league play. You try to study how he played against top 20 teams. You try to figure out what a guy can do in clutch situations. So I think we've studied the guys that we've gotten, or even the guys that we maybe missed on and didn't get. I think there shouldn't be a lot of surprises with the transfer due to the fact that you're able to evaluate that player in Division I level. So I don't know if there's been any real surprises. I mean, we have been, we've been banged up. We've had a lot of guys on the side that'll all be, for the most part, when we come back. I mean, we have one more practice tomorrow, and when we come back, we should be a team that's fully healthy, and there's no reason to go into who was hurt. It's irrelevant because we're doing everything behind closed doors, and when we come back, other than the timeline of Brazil will be a little bit different than some of our other guys, because we are being overly precautious with him and want to make sure that we hit that 9-month mark before he does a whole lot.
Coach, you talked about the Purdue game, but you also have Duke coming in for the ACC-SEC Challenge. Just what does it say about where your program is to get those two teams coming into Bud Walton?
Yeah, well, I think Purdue, that game in particular, like they had a choice of probably doing that game with a lot of people. And I think that, Coach Painter and his staff understand that, Bud Walton is a unique place to play, and I'm really hopeful that our fans across the state understand the significance of getting a team like this for an exhibition, because there's not a lot of exhibition games that are being played against Division I teams. And so we're doing something unique. We're doing something that, you know, I mean, you're putting it all out there really quickly. You know, you're auditioning in front of a lot of people. You know, there's a little bit more opinions are going to be formed during that game, after that game, than if you play a Division II team. So, credit to Purdue for being willing to play a road game. Credit to them to be willing to play a quality opponent, and same thing from us. Like they've proven a lot more than we have with who they have coming back. So, and then the Duke game. Look, Bud Walton was going to be sold out, you know, regardless of what our schedule looked like across the board. But the 4 years that I've been here, I would anticipate that that the Duke game is going to be like, you know, when we played Kentucky and when we played Auburn, and they've been ranked very high. I know that the requests, you know, that I've gotten from friends. I was talking to Phil Nevin last night, the Angels manager. He's coming to that game. Like, there's a lot of people that want to come to that particular game too, which is, you look at our schedule with the 3 Bahama games at the Battle of Atlantis, and then you look at, you know, Oklahoma, and you look at Duke. That's going to be as 5 challenging games as this program's ever played, non-conference. And you know, we'll figure out ways to get better after playing those 5 games too, because we're going to find some holes in our team for sure. With a lot of new guys playing that quality opponent. We know Duke will come in here 1, 2, or 3 as well. So between the Purdue game and the Duke game, we'll probably play 2 of the top 3 teams in the country in a 4-week span.
Kentucky staying with schedule at home and away for a back-to-back season. It's only going to be the 3rd time since Arkansas's been in the SEC. Has there anything come from
How
the
many
league?
times has it been since I've been here?
Twice, 2 out of right. But I mean, I always thought that those are 2 of your premier programs in the league. Why weren't they playing more home and away? Did you get anything from the office other than here's the schedule? Do you know why they're leaning into that?
We just get the schedule.
Okay.
You know, but I mean, certainly, you know, with Coach Cal and his program, I mean, it's like what they experience as a team every year. They go into everybody's building. You know, it's sold out. It's a game that's circled right away. You know, for us, if you look at our road attendance, and I have not studied the numbers, but probably should. I'd love to know what our road attendance is this year, because we went in a lot of buildings that were sold out too. And with each passing year, again, I don't have the numbers, and I could definitely be way off. But if I had to guess, our road attendance numbers have probably increased as well.
Okay, and a follow-up. You don't have to go to Knoxville, I think, for the first time since you've been here this year. They come in, and have you considered now getting a timeshare in Tuscaloosa? The schedule seems to send Arkansas to Bama lately, and now you get Tennessee.
Yeah, and I think that, every coach, every program has their own philosophy on things. But your question, Kevin, is in the NBA, it's an 82-game schedule. And you play everybody equal, right? You play your conference a certain amount of games. You play the other conference home and away. At Nevada, we had a balanced schedule. So winning the league carried a lot of weight. When you have an imbalanced schedule, strength of schedule matters. And who you play and where you play them and what time of the year you play them matters. So we had a much higher goal at Nevada to win the conference based on how the schedule was set up. Here, I don't know how you determine who. It's really hard to determine who the best team is, because not everybody's schedule's equal. And so, like, our goal is, how do we get better in March? How do we advance in the tournament? that's always going to be our goal because of what you said. I mean, I can tell you a lot of restaurants in certain cities, and then there's other cities in our league that I have no idea of one restaurant based on how often or how little we've visited them.
Yeah, Coach, this is the first time we've been able to talk to you since the board approved those Bud Walton renovations. I was just curious your thoughts.
I mean, it's way over my, deal, but man, obviously, I think anytime there's going to be renovations with anything, you're excited, and I know that there'll be a lot of conversations on, what it will look like, and I probably won't ask too much unless they ask about the locker room. But I think whatever, they come to is going to be awesome for the program and great for the fan base, the game of college basketball is changing. It's becoming way more entertainment. Part of that's having your building be the place to be, so that you don't just want to cater to basketball fans. You need to cater to people that don't necessarily love basketball, and you do that by having amenities in an arena. That's what makes pro sports different, is how they market and get people to come to their games that aren't coming just for the ball and the two hoops. They're coming to a place to be. It's fun environment. It's entertain. All those things, and certainly having a building be renovated, I think it can certainly add to that tremendously.
You mentioned the Oklahoma game. How did that game kind of get back on the schedule? If it wasn't, what went into that?
Well, I read, that at one point Hunter said it was off, and I thought it was off too. It was discussed, possibly playing it in Oklahoma City. It was discussed, are we going to do it or not do it in Tulsa? I think it's great for Oklahoma. I think it's great for Arkansas. I think it's great for the Sooners fan base. I think it's great for the Razorback fan base. I think it's great for Porter Mosier. I think it's great for our staff. So the environment there, any fans that haven't been there for either program, I think it's a great game. It gives you a different feel than our own building. Much like the Little Rock game does. It's really cool. It's if you play double-digit games in Bud Walton, then you get an opportunity to go play a game, and it helps us prepare for the NCAA tournament. I can tell you that. To obviously you go to Little Rock, and it's it's all 100% Razorback fans, but still it's a different environment that we have to adjust to, which I think helps prepare our basketball team. From a fan base standpoint, it's great as well. Going to Tulsa, jumping on a bus, staying in it's different than playing a game in this building. It is a neutral site game, so I think that's an awesome game for us too on the schedule.
Coach, with Tremont and Jeremiah, has anything in particular stood out to you about those guys this summer, and where do you think they can maybe best help you?
Yep. So T. Mark is you're talking about a guy that started on a team that was ranked number 1 for most of the year. So that alone speaks volumes. Houston, one of the toughest teams physically, one of the best defensive teams every year. One of the most disciplined coaches. So T. Mark got all of that. I think he's a very underrated offensive player from the way that he's improved his game in a short few months. I think he's a player that defensively, him and Devontae Devo Davis together are going to be really good. Devo has taken on the challenge, even as a freshman, to guard the opposing team's best player, regardless of if that player plays the 1, 2, or the 3. And oftentimes Devo's assigned to the power forward if need be. And now he's got another partner to try to, it's really hard, man. When you assign a guy the best player on the other team and he's holding that guy under his average and the bulk of the plays are run at you and you're fighting off screens, you're on an island on isolations. What Devo's done defensively is insane. He really only had one game last year where I felt like the offensive player, that means he won 29 battles, and he was basically 29-1 in his individual matchups. And I think that T. Mark can do the same thing for us, which, let's face it, in college basketball, premier scorers are usually the point guard, off guard, or small forward. With the exception of certain teams, where Mississippi State's going to throw the ball into Tulu Smith, and you got a big that. But for the most part, if you generalized 1, 2, and 3, and now we got two guys that play two of those three positions that are incredible defenders from an individual standpoint. And then Davenport really shoot the basketball, got great range, can play the 3, if we want to go small ball, can play some 4. So he's given us a stretch the floor type player that we look at our numbers we obviously needed.
Mus, going back to recruiting, but the 5 returnees, how important, it kind of gets overlooked, retention. I considered Brazil and Devo bookend 5-star recruiting prizes when you look at it from a retention standpoint. Can you talk about how that's helped the whole thing internally when you do bring in a total of 9 newcomers, even with 5 returnees?
Yeah, I think if you look at college football, if you look at college baseball, if you look at college basketball, there's a lot of starters. There's a lot of top 3 scorers off teams in Power 5 that are transferring. We have not had that. J.D. Note, he elected to go pro a year before his eligibility, but he did not elect to transfer and leave Arkansas. Adese Toney elected to go pro with a year of eligibility, but he did not transfer. So we have not had anybody, walk into my office at the end of the year like a TB or a Devo and decide that somewhere else, and we've been very, very lucky from that aspect to not have a starter that's a top 2 player or because it happens in every sport. And so the impact, Kevin, that those guys have for us right now, words can't describe. TB's on the side coaching players, and Devo, I said our team had 1 bad practice. Devo's had 1 bad practice all year. That's a lot of practices with only, over, you go 8 out of your 10 weeks, and he had 1 bad practice, and I'm assuming that bad practice we had a team was probably the one that he had a bad practice. So having those guys back, even Cade and Lawson, like those guys are, it has a big impact when you try to demonstrate something and you have players jump out there and demonstrate it. It changes your culture. And all the guys that are, same with Joseph, he knows exactly what we want, and he can go out and show, verbalize, and show just by doing what's asked of him. Before Mike rushes me off, anybody else got anything, or are we good? We're good? All right, Mike, good timing.